Inside Blitz Week 10. Joined with Ron and Ted Sobel. How are you guys doing this week?
Good. Ready for one more Germany game, and then we can get back to the real world again.
Yeah, everything's fine on this end. Hopefully we won't have any outside noise as the studio is relocated to the patio area today, but excited to talk football at the halfway point.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to respond real quickly to the WCVB5 fan who was nice enough to leave a message earlier. He didn't hear me on Sports USA last Sunday. That's because I am no longer the network studio host. I'm on to different stuff as of immediately. So, again, thanks for asking. And 19 years, time for a new chapter.
Well, that's very good. So where are we going to start off this week, Ted?
Well, I did want to talk a little bit about the last night's game, and now we're done with that. Let's move on after that.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was long enough.
You covered that thoroughly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Hey, I didn't realize. Now, Ron, you didn't mention this when I asked you about Tyler Bagent a couple of weeks ago. I saw them post. I actually watched about 5 plays, and one of them, they mentioned that he is the all-time leading pass touchdown guy in college football history, even though it's Division II. Did you know that?
I knew he threw a ton of passes because he was there for 5 years. They just threw a lot of passes. He has a lot of work, a big body of work. Ted, you and I talked last night or texted last night, and I told you how few quarterbacks were rated by me in this 2023 draft. And we'll get into quarterbacks a little bit later. You have some audio and we'll talk about some quarterbacks. But he was one of the star also eligible rated quarterbacks that I did have because of his body of work.
Okay, well, that's good. Obviously, somebody liked him because he's on a roster and now he's playing. He's limited, I guess. Maybe they're limiting him, but they did let him throw some, like freely instead of just handing the ball off. And I thought that was a positive sign. Who knows if he's talented enough to be anything more than a backup in this.
Yeah, that's probably going to be about it for him.
Yeah. Anyway, that's probably about it on the Bears and Panthers. Any thoughts on the Germany game at all, guys? Just the fact that it's the last international game of the year. There's something about this Patriots team that is really not very positive for the long haul to me. They're 0-5 out of the division and really showing very little progress in anything.
Go for it, Cris.
They're an enigma to me. I just don't understand why Bill stuck around. I mean, he had to have. I mean, is this guy just completely out to lunch? I mean, he had to have known what he was dealing with.
Well, he's the GM too, in reality, right? So he really picks his own guys. It's as much his fault as anybody's. At the same time, he is going for the all-time wins record, and I wonder if that's the main reason he's sticking around. It seems like a weird one, but he's only about a year or two away, I think.
Didn't Shula stay on way too long?
Yeah, now he's gone.
Yeah. People like me who study the draft, for so long and in such detail understand that Bill Belichick, the coach, is still, or at least was still, a very elite coach. Bill Belichick, the GM and talent evaluator, always had a grade of D minus, and it's not just from me, it's from others who survey the kind of wide receivers he's brought in, the kind of talent he's brought in that takes 3-4 years to develop, the fact that he hasn't understood that the game has gotten faster and he hasn't gotten faster with it. I still think he wants to be around next year. He drafted 13 or 14 guys, and a coach that only wants to be there 1 year doesn't draft 13 or 14 guys.
Yeah, but has he evolved at all offensively? Obviously, he showed he didn't last year, and now they bring in a real offensive coordinator, and that hasn't even made much of a difference.
No, hasn't made much of a difference at all. One thing about this Germany game is the not so rumor, but more fact of the matter is that the crowd is going to be 75-25 New England. This is their kind of adopted city, as we've heard.
A lot of Brady jerseys, probably.
Yeah. I mean, home game, no, not completely, but there is a little something that maybe they get a little excited, the fact that they're going to have some people rooting for them.
Yep. Good to see Jonathan Taylor's back and healthy again and playing for the Colts. And I think as long as he stays that way, they can win some games this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm counting on him to do his job. I didn't realize the Colts played so poorly last week. You'd have to think that they're due for a bounce back, and they'll put out a better effort this week, even though they got the win last week.
Right. Yeah, it was ugly, no doubt about it. They're limited, and I don't know what to expect from their new coaching staff and how that's going to go moving forward. But I just give the ball to Taylor a lot of times this week.
You know, we know New England's coach is not, or New England's team is not going to make the playoffs this year. Probably not Indianapolis coach in terms, and the team not making the playoffs this year. But the main topic that I kind of put out there this week was playoff contender and pretender. And I want to get your thoughts on a whole bunch of these teams. And you tell me whether they're playoff contenders or pretenders, starting with the team that bugs me the most because I can't get a handle on them, and that's the Cleveland Browns, contender or pretender.
Yep, totally have no idea what to expect out of them every week. And that's really one of the games of the week in my mind at Baltimore. I mean, it means a lot in the division. If Cleveland wins this game, they can show that they are maybe for real. We have no idea. I don't know what the latest is on Deshaun Watson. I keep hearing a different word on him. Seems like almost every other day. So I guess his shoulder is still bothering him. It's day to day. Aren't we all? What else is new?
Cris, contender or pretender for Cleveland?
I considered them contenders, but they were kind of a dark horse for me at one point. And then the last few weeks, they've kind of they're kind of falling apart. That offense just isn't clicking, and they may not have the tools. I mean, these guys they're getting old. I mean, and the defense, it's good, but it's not lockdown good.
Well, I think it's better than that. If you
I think
shut out in this
good,
league,
but it's not lockdown good.
Well, they were locked down last week. I know
it'll
they
be interesting.
They played nobody, but a shutout is a shutout.
I think Myles Garrett has single-handedly won at least one of their games.
Yes.
So if you say defense in plural, we still may not know all the answers with that.
Yeah, he did a great job. I needed him in that game.
No doubt.
Cincinnati,
Yes.
pretender or contender? I have already been in the contenders category.
Elite
your guys'
contender.
opinion. Elite contender.
The Browns are
absolutely.
minus 160 to make the playoffs.
Really interesting. Okay.
It's a little high to me, but
Me too.
It's going to depend on some other teams getting hot that we'll talk about.
Yeah, it's also going to depend on their quarterback situation. If it's every week we don't know who their starter is, that's going to end up biting them in the ass eventually.
I consider the
Cleveland
Bengals
weather
a
is
contender, but they're a little strong at minus 250, aren't they? There's a lot of stuff that can get in their way.
250 is a little overvalued. I would probably price it at 200. That's a good call.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's a little strong.
Yeah, they've won 5 of their last 6. They got some injuries at the receiver spot. No T. Higgins this week. Jamar Chase looks like he's going to be back from his back. He fell hard on it, real big time, but good MRI results there. They need him, obviously, especially without T. Higgins. But look, Burrow, once he turned to be 100%, as John Robinson, the old coach, told me a few years ago when he first entered the league, he's the closest thing he has seen to Joe Montana, and he's starting to look like it again.
Mm-hmm. Russell says Jags contender pretender. I think they run away with the division, so they're automatically going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
The issue is, are they a contender versus the top teams in the AFC to start with? Well, Buffalo's fallen off. Their defense is not quite as good. But to compete with Kansas City and a healthy Baltimore, that's what we have to find out. And of course, we're going to find out a lot this week against San Francisco.
Big time. And it looks like Debo is expected to return, and Trent Williams is possible. He's back to practicing some, so that's a positive sign for San Francisco. Off the bye.
I think he's good to go.
Is he? The last I heard, they said he's still limited in practice. So hopefully he's able to go. But, boy, did they need this bye week. That was great timing for San Francisco.
Yep.
Well, I look forward to seeing that San Francisco we saw before the injuries set in. And the only thing that I worry about with San Francisco is it was a little uneasy seeing some of Purdy's plays. I mean, he did well sometimes, but he looked pretty darn average sometimes. But he didn't have the support staff. He'll have the support staff back. So I want to see if he steps back in the groove with these guys like he was before.
Yeah, your guys' thoughts on Purdy being now proving he's a system quarterback, or it's just a little, little flub in the road here, and he's going to be fine.
Bad sample size that we're talking about because there was a possible concussion, there was travel fatigue, they had 2 terrible rest differentials. Let's give them this wonderful week off and let's see what happens down the road. He's not as bad as the last 3 weeks, and he's probably not the top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He's somewhere in between.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to give you one that I know you guys are going to say pretender, but you could possibly, because the name TJ Watt is involved, say they're at least somewhat of a contender. Your thoughts on the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Tough division, and I think they're a slight contender. I still don't trust their quarterback over the long haul, although I like the fact he doesn't make a lot of mistakes in general, so he's a good game manager, but I don't know if I trust him in a tough conference to get there.
They're an underdog to make the playoffs at this point, but
they should be.
But they've got things going their way because they're 2-0 in the division. They're 4-2 in the conference. Those are good numbers for tiebreakers. And they still play teams within their division. So they control a lot of their own destiny. And they seem to win ugly. So you have to respect the fact that at least they can do it.
Yeah. And a good stat for Kenny Pickett. He is 10-3 in 1-score games over the last couple of years. So, you got to give the guy credit for that. Although, again, do you really trust him when you need him? Well, those numbers are pretty good, and they got the Packers this week, which means probably a win because I don't know if Jordan Love can score against that D. TJ Watt might be in his face all game long.
Yeah, the thing with Pittsburgh, I have them as a soft contender as long as TJ Watt is on the field.
Yeah.
The minute he goes out, you're going to see some live betting from me. That's it. I mean, it's just automatic. That's what I can tell you. Having their number 1 receiver back, Johnson, has been a huge asset as well, because if you think the offense hasn't clicked, and it hasn't this year, it would be even worse without Johnson in the lineup.
Right.
Yeah, they would be the Enron Steelers if he's out.
And it looks like Aaron Jones is hopeful to play this week for the Packers with his hammy, which is probably going to bother him the rest of the year.
Jim
anyway.
Harbaugh be coaching for Michigan tomorrow? Cris, you take that question.
Which question?
Harbaugh question.
Wes Clayton.
Oh, how am I missing it? Oh, he'll be coaching tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, from the sideline, huh? I'm going to give you one that's probably a pretender, but convince me otherwise because it's still not a great division. Houston, contender or pretender?
I love C.J. Stroud so far. How can you not? And I love their coach. D'Amico Ryans is exactly what we thought he would be. They want to play for him hard, and they do every single week with a roster that is not a whole lot to get excited about. You got to love what they're doing. They got an easy schedule, so maybe.
Thoughts, Cris?
I think plus 235 seems to be priced about right.
Okay.
I think I think that they do have some hope, but these injuries just keep piling up, and at some point you'd think that they're going to get run out of steam, and potentially the Bengals could blow their doors off and hurt their confidence and their feelings and stuff. So we'll just have to see.
I like what you said, Ted, and I mean they're just trying all the time, and they're been a fantastic season. They're on the outside looking in for me, but I just thought I should bring them up because
why not?
They've been very interesting this year. One more in the AFC, and it's going to surprise you because it's one of the storylines for me this week. I just wonder if we're going to see a different Denver or the same old Denver.
I knew you were going to say Denver.
Oh, that's a good question. I have no idea, and neither does their coach. The fact that they're off a bye, I think that's going to make it even a little more interesting. Well rested, positive thoughts. They've won 2 in a row. Going against the Bills team that on a Monday night that is just sort of reeling, and the Bills. We're not going to talk a lot about that game, I'm sure, but they just had a players only meeting led by Latavius Murray of all people. Would you explain that? Explain that to me. How does this guy call a players only meeting? I think it's his 6th team in the league.
Seniority?
Chris, help me out. Help me out, Chris. You're trailing 4 or 5 weeks on Denver's defense. Where are they?
I restarted my computer and I need to get that back up. But I think I'm very interested in this game because Buffalo is looking very shaky, and it just feels like Denver could, start to do some damage. You take away those first few weeks of the season, and you look at Denver basically after the Miami game. They're okay. They were pulling things together. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them go into Buffalo and actually win. Frankly, they've got a decent defense. Buffalo has problems on defense. It's going to be Denver weather, but I guess that's Buffalo weather. It's going to be around 40 degrees, 20 plus mile an hour winds.
Wow.
A little frigid. So that should potentially keep the offense down a little bit. So lower scoring, more things can happen.
Yeah, I think it's anybody's game, and especially with the weather factor. But I don't know that I feel any trust with that Denver offense at all. And so
I've got some numbers for you.
Please.
Unless my numbers are wrong, quietly, and I mean really, really quietly, Russell Wilson's TD to interception ratio, do I have it right at 16 TDs, 4 interceptions?
You know what? I have not followed it closely enough. It's very quiet.
That would be something that has Peyton fixed to some extent. Not his internal clock. Russell Wilson still runs into defensive linemen too much. But 16-4 is not what I expected to see when I was tabulating some numbers.
No, I'm sure they've had a lot of private meetings talking about not just protecting the ball, but getting rid of the ball ASAP. And I think that's part of the success there.
Let's go to the NFC. Let's talk about
let me answer your question there. I don't have Denver doing anything spectacular on defense over the last 5 weeks.
No, just
but not
wins
bottom
over
5, right? Not what they were the first 3 weeks.
Oh no, they're getting better. They're in over the last 5 weeks on defense. They're like 8th or 9th.
Right. Well, a standout win over Kansas City. I mean, that's any way you look at it, that's a hell of a win.
So let's talk about a team Chris and I talked about on Tuesday. Any concerns with Minnesota with Dobbs at the quarterback, position now. There's not Kirk Cousins. Are they playoff bound? I have them right now in the playoffs.
The Vikings?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's very questionable. I mean, look, Josh Dobbs did great at the beginning of the year with Arizona, and then he totally tailed off. And then he came back, and it was one of those a storybook finish in his first game. I love everything about they call him the Pastronaut. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, I love that line. That NASA calls him the Pastronaut because he's literally a rocket scientist.
Oh.
This whole he's worn an astronaut. He wants to be an astronaut. The guy's an unbelievable person. So I'm rooting for him big time. I just don't know that if he's the starter every week, and he's going to be now, if it's enough. I don't know.
Are we not giving now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Getting back to Denver, I actually have they've made quite a climb.
Okay.
I actually didn't notice that they're in a position you have to respect them compared to other teams. There are teams you'd be surprised I have them above. So in Minnesota, we're rooting for them because we bet them live on the show Tuesday to make the playoffs. So we're rooting for them. I think they have a shot. The game is off the board many places because they moved Jefferson to questionable, but I don't think he's going to show up this week.
No, not this week. And I will say this, another quiet under the radar thing, and this is something I'm going to talk about when I talk about methodology. Brian Flores, we kind of forgot about him. He came over as defensive coordinator for Minnesota. And at the beginning of the year, I thought Minnesota was going to be relatively hopeless defensively. They'd lost some stars. They hadn't replaced them correctly. Their rookies from 2022 basically missed their rookie seasons. They barely played. So this was their rookie season. You got to give Flores credit for at least turning the defense around somewhat so that the offense can always keep them in games.
Yep.
And so we'll see what happens.
No, it's a good call. Look, everything Flores seems to touch is good, except for when he's the head coach and the guys want to bash him in the head. But outside of that, he's a no nonsense kind of guy. And I think a lot of the players now can't deal with that, but maybe defensively as just a DC, I think he's perfect.
I have Minnesota rated above 6 unquestionable teams that will unquestionably vie for playoff spots.
That was unquestionable the way you said that. Well, you know what? Minnesota can do it because of the conference. There's a gap there. There's a possibility. Somebody's got to grab it. If Josh Dobbs is good enough, they got as good a chance as anybody to get in.
Okay, here's one for you. In honor of Birdie, let's talk Atlanta. What's the playoff odds for them to make the playoffs, Cris?
I would think minus 120, minus 140.
Wow.
It's because of their division, right? Because we're only projecting.
Well, no, they're plus money. They're plus 140. So what do I know?
They should be plus.
Yeah.
I don't like them. Their pass game has just been awful. Drake London should be back this week, which is a nice positive. But I think they're 31st in pass yards per game. That ain't gonna get it done. That's not a playoff team.
I see a scroll here.
What's that?
Oh, we appreciate everybody in their comments, and we apologize if we are unable to get back in a timely fashion. So
yes,
sure,
absolutely.
blame me. Cris has the controls. So, but I'm looking at the questions. I love the questions. Keep them coming.
Yeah, keep them coming. Absolutely.
We'll talk coaches down, a different show, I think, but I don't see a reason why Atlanta should keep its coach if they don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's a game where they if they don't win this week, a road favorite at Arizona, I give up. I mean, seriously, if they lose this game, how can you even see them making the playoffs?
Yeah,
It's
that
a-
would
it's
that
a-
would be a tough division. I mean, not in the division, but a conference loss.
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
one more for you before we move on to some audio, and
Okay.
it's going to be a little bit surprising because I don't know that they're a shoe-in, and I just want to get it out in the open. Thoughts about the Seattle Seahawks?
I think we're going to learn a lot about them this week.
Yeah, they're not a shoo-in because of their quarterback. Because Geno is starting to look like Geno of the Jets again. He needs to clean things up and in a hurry. All of a sudden, the last handful of weeks, he's not the same guy that we were all excited about, like comeback player of the year. Now he's the fullback player of the year. So I don't know what to say, but he needs to get better and in a hurry. And they got the Commanders, which, means they'll probably have about 8 sacks again this week. Seattle.
Yeah. Washington started to take money at 6.5. It looked like he was going to hit 7, and people were too impatient and took the 6.5. I think it would hit 7. So little bit of premature ejaculation with that one, because I think it would have hit 7 and they would have had a better number. But if they were that desperate to get in on it, maybe they have some info.
I would definitely take the dog in this game. No doubt about it.
Yeah, with Seattle, they should make the playoffs. You talked about the fact this is the NFC and there's not as much competition for that 6 and 7 spot. I do have them in the playoffs, but it's not in ink. It's in heavy pencil right now, having them in the playoffs, because they're still a young team and they just can't afford to have some Geno Smith turnovers.
Yeah, exactly. And, they have been rushing the passer maybe better than expected, Ron, this year. They've had 3 games I saw where it was 10 or more quarterback hits, and that's the most in the league.
It's a little bit above their expectations. However, the league as a whole is sacking much better. There's been a lot of theory as to why. One of the theories is because half the league has backup quarterbacks, but
and the rest of the league has bad O-lines. But besides that,
other than that, but there's been a defensive slant this year. There's always a pendulum moving back and forth, point, counterpoint. And right now there's a little bit of a defensive slant.
Yeah.
Audio. We've got audio, right?
Yes, we do. And of course, we're going to start with Chris's Detroit Lions, who look like David Montgomery's back, which is good news for them against the Chargers in LA, which means it's a nice Detroit home game, 2,500 miles from home. And I like everything about the Lions this week. They're off a bye. They're pretty damn healthy. And their head coach, Dan Cambell, is excited, even more so than I am. And let's go with number 1, where he's talking about facing the Chargers run D.
They have done a good job against the run. I know that was an emphasis for them going into this year. So they do some good things, but we'll have some things to try to attack them, certainly in the run game. And then build off of that. But look, they're playing pretty good football, particularly these last 2 games. Defensively they're playing pretty good. So we know it's going to be a challenge, and we're going to have to be efficient, stay ahead of the sticks, and it's really a dangerous team in that regard on offense and defense. So we can't play their game. They have done a good job.
One of the things I won't go with too many coaches when it comes to putting sound on here. There are a handful of guys I would really, I love to hear. And Campbell's one of them, because you know what? He's just a straight guy. He just tells you what he thinks. There's very little coach speak with him, which is extremely unusual. One of the coaches we haven't talked about much this year is the new offensive coordinator for the Chargers, Kellen Moore. We've talked about their head coach, but what Moore has brought to the team. And Campbell had some thoughts on that, while, of course, the Chargers dominated on O by Herbert and Kellen, Moore. Go for it.
Expected more runs. They're throwing the ball, they're throwing the heck out of the ball. They've got that quarterback. Look, everything starts with him. It always will. I said this the other day. He's a very good athlete. He's an accurate passer, big time arm, smart, and he's tough. God, he's tough. He'll just sit in there and hit after hit. He'll just continue to throw the ball. And so they've done a good job of, look, they're going to put 13 in positions to win by what they think that, the odds say you're playing this coverage by this situation. They're going to find a way to get 13 matched up. And he's done a pretty good job of winning those one-on-ones when you give him the right matchup. So I would say that's what they've done a real good job of. Certainly Eckler, finding those matchups with him. And using him out of the backfield has been pretty big. So I think it's really been more pass related than anything else. They'll do a lot of flavor of the week type stuff, some of these things that are some of the fast motion in, some of the fast motion out, run game out of that, the turbos. They mix it up nicely. They've got gap, they got zone, they got inside zone. Certainly all gun runs at this point with where the Q's at. But, so I think they're pretty efficient, and there again, this quarterback makes it go. I expected more runs.
Yep. Okay, so there is a 13, by the way, if you don't know, is I'm sorry,
Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen, of course. Now I forgot. Yeah, Keenan Allen is more of a key than ever with Mike Williams out for the year, and why not go to him like all day long? The guy finds a way to get open. Did everybody see that catch he made last week, which was just ridiculous, where he caught it off balance, turned around, and 99 out of 100 guys are going to drop that ball. There's no way. So that was just spectacular. And we have one more cut too, if you want to hear it from Coach talking about making sure the Lions are a lot cleaner, less turnovers, specifically on the road.
I want to hear this.
Going.
It'll be huge. It'll be huge for us, and we, for the most part, when we've had these turnovers, we've been able to overcome them. We're sitting here at a 0 margin right now, which isn't good enough. We got to be better than that. But it will be everything, because this team has proven that when they get these takeaways, they're very dangerous. Because they have a potent offense, and they have a defense that's able to they're creating them, right? So it's going to be very important, particularly on the road.
Okay, well, there you go. And, with the respect of the defense, something about the Chargers, they've come on a little bit and Bosa's looked better, but they're 30th overall in defense, and that ain't good. And that's their downfall as far as I'm concerned. Now the question is, can the Lions take advantage of it?
I think the scary thing is that everybody and their grandmother pretty much, at least in mainstream, just loves the Lions. And that makes me a little bit nervous because, quite frankly, there is no excuse whatsoever for them to lose this game. They come in fully healthy. That Gibbs guy that ran for 130 and caught 60 last time on national TV and had very high praise put upon him. He's getting better and better and better. Well, the starter's back. Montgomery, the workhorse, the one that was keeping the touchdown machine. The guy that's going to help them in the red zone. So you get him back there. You can mix him up with Gibbs. You had another 2 weeks to work with Jameson. There's nobody injured, I don't think. Everybody.
No, they're really healthy.
And they've been able to prepare, and there's just no excuse. I'll tell you something. It's going to be really interesting if they fart away this game, because there's no excuse. They are a better team, top to bottom. They should be able to beat this team.
Well, I like the Chargers roster a lot. You know what I think about their head coach. Your turn, Ron.
I think Eckler, he thinks it's going to be a running back battle, but I think Eckler will be used in the pass game much more so than in the run game. I don't think he'll find yards easy to come by in this game against the Lion defense. It's not going to be necessarily completely shut down, but I would be surprised if he ran for over 4 yards a carry. Yeah. The Lions added Donovan Peoples-Jones to the roster.
Yep.
before the trade, and that's their way of trying to wake up Jamison Williams, saying Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to be more reliable in terms of, and again, the trade deadline coupled with the bye is the best thing that can happen, where they don't have to acclimate within 5 days. Trade deadline's on a Tuesday, you play the next Sunday, it's worthless. But here he gets 12 days to work on timing with Jared Goff. And I think you'll see a couple of key moments where it's Peoples-Jones and not Donovan, and not Jamison in the lineup.
I think Peoples-Jones has some injuries though too. So I don't know how healthy he is coming into this thing. They talked about it earlier in the week. That's a TBD right there. I want to know again, I know we talked about it early in the season. What were your thoughts on Jamison coming into this season and what he did in college? Because he seems to be maybe a case of the drops and not the most confident route runner in the world.
Yeah, you can improve on those things. The worry for him was that he had not been an elite route runner in college at Alabama. He just got open and they got the ball to him because Alabama has NFL offensive linemen, and they're just better than the opponents that they face, especially when they had stronger quarterback play back there. So he has a lot to learn about the nuances of route running. And I think you saw, maybe Cris can comment on this, there were a couple of moments when Goff had to do a teaching thing with Jamison Williams because he ran the wrong route, or he wasn't in there, or he rounded off, or he didn't continue with his route. So that may not improve. And that's what we have to look at, because he's got all the speed in the world. And if you catch him in open space, that's what you drafted him for.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys who've had a lot of speed, and we know that they ended up, running home because they couldn't play in the league.
I don't think he's a bust out by any means.
It's too early anyway.
There is concern that he should be doing much better than he has been doing. But last year he had the injury. This year he had the suspension.
Right.
So, the guy hasn't had a clean slate either of these 2 seasons.
Yeah.
No, that's true. And right now, Jared Goff just has more confidence in other guys. Reynolds, who came over with the Rams with him, he knows where to find him. In a pinch, he's going to go to the people he trusts, and that's what quarterbacks do.
Yeah, and I think Goff is going to be throwing more this week to his running backs than usual. I look for that. That's my opinion.
You have another audio, right? You have one of our favorite quarterbacks.
When did that start? Like 5 minutes ago or what?
And by the way, thanks for bringing the audio. I think having clips of Dan Cambell, and having our audience get to listen to actual coach talk and not just,
coach speak.
Baloney, coach
right,
Steve.
Right.
Exactly.
That's why I brought him up, because he says what he thinks, which is great. Very refreshing. There's only a handful of guys like that in the league. The other guy we're going to hear from is your favorite, Zach Wilson of the New York Jets, who they're favorite on the road this week. It's a weird game. I can't figure that game out at all. That's going to be. Are the Raiders just going to play so hard for Antonio Pierce that they're going to win the Super Bowl? Who knows? Anyway, what I wanted to bring out with Zach Wilson was coming off the loss. When they lost to the Chargers at home, he has changed his attitude from the past. Remember, one of the knocks on him, and not because he was on Hard Knocks, was the fact that he was always blaming everybody else and not himself. And now that's changed. And I think some of that maybe had Aaron Rodgers get in his face, and he learned from him. I think in other ways, he's learned the hard way because he's in New York and from the media, and he better learn. Otherwise, he's going to be out of there anyway. But let's hear from Zach Wilson, who was first asked, what do you need to work on most, Zach?
Yeah, I don't know if it's one thing. I want to get the ball out of my hands quicker. I want to, get more completions, get the ball out of my hands to our playmakers, and want to make plays. There's a lot. So we got to figure something out.
Zach, if you had to compare where you were a year ago to where you are right now, confidence-wise, comfortability-wise, where would that comparison be?
I feel like I'm a different player. I feel like I'm in the best position I've ever felt mentally. My understanding of the game. I feel ready to be out there and be competing, and so that's what's so frustrating, and just not getting things done. It's frustrating, and it starts with me finding a way. But I'm ready for the opportunity in the moment, and we got to find a way to get it done.
Well, why do you think this offense has struggled the way it has?
I'm not sure, man. I really do think it is the self-inflicted wounds. I feel like anytime we get something good going, we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot and put us behind the sticks a little bit, and not doing well situationally, I would say. Not well in the red zone, not well in third down, so we got to find a way to be better. Yeah, I don't know if it's one thing.
They do need to find a way to be better and not get sacked 8 times in a game. that will kill you. That O-line absolutely is a joke. If Aaron Rodgers thinks he's coming back and he wants to come back to that O-line, he might be back on IR within the first 3 or 4 plays of his return. It's insane how bad they are.
Well, he sounded very confident. He talked me into betting the Jets. I'm ready to go.
There you go.
This is an important game for him and for the Jets because his accuracy this year, regardless of what he said, is not of NFL starter quality. It's under 60%, which I use as the Mendoza line in terms of for NFL quarterbacks. And he's going up against a team that allows nearly 7 out of 10 completions in the Raiders. So if we see another 22 out of 39 performance for him, or whatever the case may be, which is around 57+%, I don't like that, because then when he plays against harder teams, tougher teams, I don't think you can count on him.
I'm feeling bad for Mario Mendoza, who now there's a Mendoza line in football. He wasn't even that bad, but he can't get away with anything for the rest of his life. Yeah. Look, let's give credit to the Raiders. They bounced back beautifully. What are they going to do this week? You got to love everything about what Max Crosby brings to that team. 9.5 sacks. He might have 9 in this game alone. So
you can't rule it out.
One thing Cris and I discussed on Tuesday, and even though we have differing opinions on the team, I think both of us knew that the Jets favored by 2 points at the time that we were recording our show on Tuesday was wrong. And that's why there was some comment here and other people, did you bet, what did I bet and so on. Yes, I bet on the Raiders +2 at that number, because that number was completely wrong according to my power ratings. You can add in a new interim coach spike, which might last one more week because they're home on a Sunday night. And I think we do see an interim coach spike one more week. These things tend to last no more than 3 weeks. Sometimes they only last 1 week. So I think I think we get another new coach spike this week. The Raiders aren't that great a team, but then again, either are the Jets.
Exactly. Was that a 2 or 3 point difference what did you open up the line at in that game?
Because it was a Sunday night game and I give an extra point, it was a 4-point difference.
4 points. Wow.
Yeah.
You don't see that very often in the NFL, do you?
No, but and there is some truth, as all my papers fly away. There is some truth to the what Cris said, or what somebody said down the road, is the line opened 2, and you're wondering, why did it open 2 that way? What do we know? Isn't that a fishy line? Doesn't that tell you that the Jets are the better team? And I respect that opinion, but I also respect the fact that the line was going to flip.
Right. It's also not too often you take a team that just lost, was it 27-6, I think was the final score, and then they at home, and then they go on the road and they're a favorite. And under these circumstances in a night game, I don't know. That's weird to me.
I think that's what Cris is banking on, the fact that when all was said and done, getting the Jets as an underdog is where Cris wants to be.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to keep Harbaugh on the sidelines.
Really?
Or, I mean, off the sidelines.
Oh, off the sidelines. He's not going to make the trip?
They're going to say he can't coach the rest of the season.
Wow. Is that
I heard
including
rumors to that
playoffs?
too.
Including the playoffs or regular season?
No, I said regular season.
Regular season. Okay. All right. Well, maybe he's not doing anything this week. He might be visiting Vegas to talk to Mark Davis.
Let's talk handicapping, Cris. You got a tip for the audience?
Let me hit this question here. Let's see here. I'll put this up here. Matt was looking for what I look for in parlays and teasers. Sounds like a lot of options hedging, but with sports, very interesting. I was on the Megapod yesterday, and we got into some. We got into a pretty good discussion on what I'm doing. So, essentially, I'm just frustrated with the results of how my model's working. So when that happens, I'm sure you do the same thing, Ron. You have to kind of look at, okay, what's going on here with my process? Is it me or is it something else? So that's what I wanted to do. And what I have found out, hate to be repetitive, but we all know 62% under so far this season. That's off the charts. 49% underdog record. That's very low.
Wow.
Underdogs of more than 3, 47%. This the average scoring margin is up significantly. I think it's over 12 points. The ridiculous level of backup quarterbacks that are in the league. There's one other thing, I forget what it was, but these are all situations and statistical anomalies that you haven't seen in 20 years, all happening at once. And this affects everything. So I don't have any concerns with what my model is long term, but how do I react to it now? So what I have chosen to do, when I look at if I'm going to bet an underdog and I look at +2.5 or +3, forget it. I'm sick of those. I've lost so many of those where that team loses by 4 to 7. It's just not worth it. So I use a layering system where I isolate games like that and put them into other games, different start time, different day, whatever. So I'm essentially betting teams that I would have bet on the spread anyway. I don't throw in teams or teasers just because it's a Wong teaser. If I don't have a play on that game, I'm not throwing it in. So I'm betting games that I would have bet anyway, and I'm using teasers on them, isolating them, and elongating my value. And last week, it turned 3 losers into winners. Tennessee, Dallas, Buffalo, didn't work on the Jets. But I have to do something because you've got a wider scoring margin and you've got bizarre results going on. Oh, and the last thing I wasn't thinking of, Ron, I want to hear what you have to think about this. Home field advantage is back all of a sudden. That's typically interesting. Been less than 1 point. It got down to less than 1 point. In my model, I was way ahead of the curve. I knew that home field wasn't worth 3 points. 3-4 years before anybody started saying it publicly. And, I actually kind of worried when people started talking about it because I thought it would muck up my model. But it was doing okay. And now it's working against me because home field advantage is up to, I believe I saw 3 points so far this season. Like an absolute ridiculous jump. Have you seen those figures, Ron?
I haven't seen it climb to 3. I'm still using 1.25 to 1.75. And I will go as high as 2 for Sunday night standalone and Monday night standalone, depending on the situation. But I have not seen, and I don't ever expect to reconnect to 3 ever again, because travel is so easy these days. Now, if you have those situations like San Francisco was faced, where it was 14-day rest versus 6-day rest and so on, you have to subconsciously at least bump up the home field advantage for if that team with the disadvantage is playing on the road. So there are subtle things that you need to do. I have some additional points I would make to what you just said, which is so important about why is scoring down and variance higher. And I think partly is because people are trying to look at analytics and they're looking at it a different way. We've never had so many teams go for it 4th and 5 at the 5-yard line.
Yeah.
Or 4th and 7 at the 42-yard line instead of punting. I mean, it's flipped to where we have 2 out of every 3 coaches going for it instead of punting or doing something else in terms of drawing them off sides and other stuff. So if they're going to miss and create a short field and the team's already behind, they're going to get behind even further because the other team only needs 20 yards to get in the field goal range. I think that's something I've learned during the season, is that if more people were going for it and more people were missing, because the analytics, in my opinion, they don't work. If you have a bad offensive team and you're going for it on 4th and 7, when you couldn't even pick up 3rd and 2, why are you going for it on 4th and 7? You're just creating more distance between the score now and the score later. And I also think teams are taking away the long ball for the most part, and you have to earn your right to go down the field, which is, to your point about clock management and taking more time between plays and stuff like that. If it's taken longer, the scores are going to be lower.
Thank you, Coach Staley.
Yeah. Oops. So those are my thoughts there.
So, but yeah, to get back to the question that Matt asked, is I'm essentially just treating my plays much more carefully. I'm putting a lot more work into betting them. And I am thinking outside the box and thinking of every single possibility of what I can do differently than betting a straight bet. How can I squeeze any value whatsoever extra betting it any way possible, whether it be a parlay? And when I talk about parlays are part of my arsenal. Parlays in my world are not about making a big score. I use them as they're basically the dump truck of my project. You know, they carry the lifting, where I want to marry strong favorites into, maybe I'm even laying, minus 110 on a parlay or just getting plus 120. It's a grind play. I'm grinding out profit in particular situations. And as I mentioned, the teasers have to be, games my model says are already good at the normal point spread, number one. And then number two, you don't do teasers just for the hell of it. And number three, you have to be doing the right combinations of teasers. There's other combinations of teasers that have utility value or are profitable, even though they aren't long teasers.
And even though Cris comes from a different angle than I am, because I'm still primarily a straight bettor and enjoying that this particular year. What Cris says is especially true when you're dealing with the extra variance of backup quarterbacks. Russell says the quarterback situation has to play a role. Absolutely, because they may dummy down the playbook for some of these quarterbacks. We're going to have the 10th rookie quarterback start this week with the New York Giants, which means that's a record. There's never been 10 rookie quarterbacks starting. And believe me, there aren't 10 rookie quarterbacks worthy of playing in the NFL, yet 10 rookie quarterbacks are starting. Yeah. So Cris has to deal with that. I have to deal with that even in straight betting. It's something that we haven't had to deal with over time. And that puts a wrinkle into 2023.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to include Zach Wilson's sound this week, because talk a little more about the quarterbacks and how it's really different than most seasons, not just the rookies who are starting, but the amount of backups who are not very good and we're stuck with them playing because of injuries. You know, I mean, it's made the league really a weird season that way. And there's so many variables now. You don't know what quarterback you're going to get because you don't trust the guy in the first place.
I want to just respond to the last comment and move on from it. But the parlays and teasers, I'm usually trying to get it to 2, but I found great value in 3. And it just depends on the circumstances and the flow of the week. So last week I had I actually had the Lions and teasers down to pick. I had the Raiders plus 17 in other teasers, and those went into Tennessee. And when that won, I have Pittsburgh teasers, so I'm actually carrying hedge teasers all the way through. And the one most important thing is that every single leg has to have a specific purpose, and you have the ability to take action at each juncture. So they very rarely am I forced to marry them, which I call, same time games. But every single leg has a specific purpose that does something that I want it to do within what I want bet for the week. So,
all right. Do you have a broken leg this week? Are you going to take the Giants plus 24.5 at all in any of your teases?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, my number on that game's 21, so it's still short.
If you value return on investment, which every listener should on the show, to add on, to put a final bow on what Cris is saying, is parlays and teasers need to be shopped around, because you can get different prices at different shops in terms of all these different, mechanisms, especially parlays. And if you don't think minus 219 or minus 105 versus minus 115 or minus 120 matters, it matters over the course of a season. So definitely shop around.
We're getting up to the hour mark. Do we have any other topics we've failed to hit?
I will briefly talk about something I did this week, and in response to what you said, Cris, as far as do I look at something if my model and stuff like that. I don't specifically look at my model for straight betting, but I look at my individual teams. I look at how I'm doing with each team, and if I'm consistently off either on their power rating with the team or the fact that, wait a second, I'm 0-3 betting for them. Why am I betting for them? I don't even like them, or something like that. I took time this week to evaluate every single team that was playing this coming week, 28 teams, and set some new projections for the rest of the season based on running back usage, based on the quarterback flow, based on especially one very key point that I think is good for methodology: coaches off a bye, especially the ones that we have 3 weeks of data already, and especially for new coaches. We learned this with Philadelphia when they had their new coach 2 years ago, and we're learning this all the time. Their run-to-pass ratio may drastically change after the bye. Their running back usage may drastically change. How they implemented their defense, whether they rushing the passer more or less, or so on. When I had 3 or more weeks of data, and even 2 weeks of data for the new coaches after the bye, I looked into that and I formed some new projections. And so my takeaway in methodology for people listening to this is take a look at your own data, take a look at your own public perceptions of each team that you're handicapping, and see if something has changed since the bye week.
Yeah, I think you touched on a critical point, which is you need to be willing to pivot and reevaluate and not be stubborn on what, question whatever you're doing, which is essentially what you're doing, is you're questioning everything that you have going on and actually looking for fault and looking for reasons to pivot, because if you can find those reasons, you're going to be at a huge advantage.
Yep, I agree completely. And a lot of times you're proud, oh, I'm right on my projections. This happened a lot with some of the college ones. This is exactly what I projected. I'm proud of that, but the most information I get is when I'm off, and why am I off?
That's true. Game of the week. You got one game. What are you going to watch? There's a handful of good games.
Baltimore, Cleveland.
What do you expect out of that game?
I love Baltimore in the game. I mean, we're going to see what Lamar Jackson's going to do. How's the weather supposed to be there? Any idea? Is that a factor?
No.
It's not a factor. Okay.
It might be rainy.
Yeah, I thought so too. But I heard that a few days ago, so I don't know what's going on in that respect. But I want to see Lamar against this Cleveland defense. I mean, that's going to tell you a whole lot about both sides, I think. And being a big AFC North battle, if Baltimore wins this game and convincingly, that'll be 5 in a row. That'll be 8-2. I mean, this is really going to tell you a lot about them and the Browns, I think.
The weather is 50 degrees, 7-mile-an-hour winds. And let's not forget possible look-ahead spots for Cincinnati and Baltimore, because they meet next Thursday. And that's a huge game for Cincy.
It is, but I can't see this being a look-ahead as far as a divisional game. It's, that's you don't have too many look-aheads in a divisional game. That's important, too. So.
That was a good question. How often do you do it? You generally just when you're going over your records and stuff, Ron.
Well, because I have these, I'm recording data on these team sheets, and I've got what I played for and against and so on, and I can eyeball it week to week and say, oh my goodness, I've lost 3 straight times on this team. What am I doing? And then I'm looking at the data right on the same sheet. So I want everything right in front of me. So it's a great question. And I think some people, especially, there's a lot of people that never even write down their wagers and what they have. And they have no idea what they've done or not done on a particular team, or they don't use power ratings and they don't know why they're off on certain lines and why they think there's value when there's not. I'm subconsciously studying it every single week. And when it really shows up, is when, oh my goodness, I keep having to adjust this power rating, or I keep having to put an L next to the column in there. So I think it's essential to do it, if not every week, every other week.
Yeah.
I still do my college football manually. I mean, I could automate it, but I would prefer to go through it manually, because it makes me really have to focus on every game for a certain period of time. And that helps, if not overtly, subconsciously, it lets me collect, data that's storing in my head that might be useful later on. I just want to familiarize myself. But when I'm coming up with possible games and such, each time I'm coming up with either a play on team or a play against team, I'm certainly thinking about, Nebraska screwed me in the rump lately. Do I really want to be on them? How am I going to ding them? Why is that happening? And this team has been winning for me, and that's good. And I can maybe show a little bit, they're overperforming what I have them doing, and other teams are underperforming. So I'm making these little adjustments, but mainly mentally, because I start over every week. I don't have power ratings. So that's kind of something very unusual. I have 0 power ratings. So I start fresh every Sunday night or Monday with college football.
Yeah, it just points out to the fact that there are different ways to be astute about what you're doing. It doesn't necessarily come from just power ratings. It's only a part of the process anyway. But that whole writing and subconscious feeling is essential in my world. And the best feeling is when you've had like 5 plays, 4 against, and you're 2-0, 4, and you're 3-0 against. That's when you're really seeing that team, because you haven't focused on going for them or against them. You just used the data that you have and the matchups that you've had, and you're hitting it right on the nose. I want to go back to your question, Cris, about what game I'm looking forward to. And Ted, Cleveland, Baltimore is a good one. I have this weird curiosity as to what Jordan Love will actually do against the Pittsburgh defense. To me, To me, this is an important game for Jordan Love. It's an important game for Green Bay's coaching staff. It's an important game for Green Bay's offense. I make no pretensions that Pittsburgh is a great team by any means, but I also don't know if Jordan Love is going to put up more than 17 points in this game, or maybe he puts up 17 and they win. I'm just fascinated.
17 yards.
For whatever reason, I want to see Jordan Love against a sophisticated defense that has TJ Watt on the other side of the ball. That's what fascinates me this week.
Yeah. Unfortunately, nothing has fascinated me about Jordan Love all year. I mean, he's been just sort of average at best, and his first halves have been awful all season long. They can't generate any offense at all. He doesn't have confidence in his receivers, and I don't know if they have confidence in him. So it's not a good combination. By the way, my 1B game this week is definitely San Francisco at Jacksonville. I am really, really fascinated by that matchup. And that's going to tell us a lot about both teams too, especially with the Niners healthier, off a bye, and off a 3-game losing streak. Go figure.
I don't put San Francisco exactly in the same category as the Lions because San Francisco's facing a better team. Jacksonville's certainly better than the Chargers. So, and San Francisco's not fully healthy, but they should win this game. I expect them to win this game, and if they stumble, I'll be really interested to see whether the evaluation is that Jacksonville is much better than we thought they were, and they are the real deal, and they are chasing that number 1 seed, and San Francisco maybe was a little overrated. But I expect San Francisco to take care of business and kind of stick little brother in the closet and lock him in there for an hour.
I agree with you. And, the Jags have won 5 in a row, and I guess you can question who they've beaten overall, but they just keep finding a way. And Trevor Lawrence doesn't have to worry about that idiot as head coach anymore. So now he could just move on and become what he's supposed to be. And so far it's been very impressive. And by the way, I watched a little of him on the Manning cast on Monday night, and he's an impressive guy. I mean, this guy really studies his game. And I think the Mannings were impressed by him too, even though I think he might have gone to Manning camp or whatever. They probably know him anyway, but I really like what I see about his evolvement and just the way he is matured.
He's a tough guy. He takes a lot of pain. And I remember, Ron, last season, at the beginning of the year, that guy was going to the bench, putting his hands like this, just looking down at the ground. And we commented on that this guy does not have any inkling of what it's like to have to, how to carry himself as a leader and to inspire the people around him. He's sitting there pouting on the sidelines. He's not happy. And we watched him evolve last season into a leader.
Yeah, I think it shows the importance of a head coach too, though, that he got more quality leadership now.
He was very tactful in his comments throughout the year.
Oh, yeah, always.
When asked to speak to the media. I think he was beaten down like the team was beaten down. I don't think that was the true Trevor Lawrence.
Well, going with Hector's lead, I'd like to say my name is Cris, and I'm interested in the Jets-Raiders game.
Well, we know you have action on it.
You're supposed to say, "Hello, Cris."
Yeah. I have one parting comment, and that's pretty much all I have. And that's talking about high variance. I'll put this to you, Cris, first. What are your expectations for Kyler Murray at home against a mediocre Atlanta defense?
I expect him to do some good things and to be average and to make at least one or two mistakes that benefits Atlanta. It depends on whether Connor makes it in. I don't know that they've announced whether he's in. I mean, that would be very helpful to him.
Yeah.
But that team's got a lot of holes. I mean, they're Swiss cheese. You can plug a few holes with cigarette butts or something, but there's still going to be holes in the rest of the team. And I don't know.
Well, I mean, he's not going to play if he's not 100% healthy. So I'm not even worried about that. He's obviously going to be rusted. There's going to be rust everywhere. So it's been a long time. So welcome back. And I guess, fortunately, he's playing at home against Atlanta. I don't know what to say.
So I haven't thought about this game until the last 15 minutes as we were talking.
Thank God.
So I'm concerned. I may have to say, hi, I'm Ron, and I have a problem. I think Arizona's going to win this game. And
wow, you do have a problem.
Extra remedial tutoring if I continue on that path. So I'm going to study it a little more.
Okay, well, I'm going to join your club real quick, Cris. Hi, I'm Ted, and I won't be watching. But go ahead.
I think I'm not going to be surprised if Arizona wins. I'll be disappointed, but I've got under 5.5 wins. I can't have him winning.
I'm the leader of the pack in under 5.5 wins, so no problem about that.
I think you're doing pretty good, even if he wins 50-0 this game.
But the Washington-Seattle game, I'm telling you, that game means something. That's all I'm going to say. Let's see who shows up.
Well, it means a lot more to the Seahawks.
That's true. That's why it's important.
Yes, it does.
All right. I think we've ran through it all. So we appreciate everybody joining us. We will be back at the same bet channel, same bet time next Friday, noon Pacific. And Ron and I will be back this coming Tuesday. And that's about it. That's all we got going. We're going to win some games this week.
Love it. Enjoy, guys. Have fun. Nice job.
See you in an hour for NCAA talk.